Hey, it's break time. Well, welcome to the Unlearning Break Time Live. And I'm Mischelle O'Neal, your resident emotional wellness coach and strategist. And I am thrilled to be here this morning. So, wow, got a question for you. Have you, do you ever find yourself second guessing yourself where you know you did the right thing, you know that this, from your gut that this was it, and yet you question yourself? Well, maybe, you're replaying that decision that you made, saying, well, but maybe I didn't look at it right. Maybe I didn't have the right perspective. All these questions that just kind of pop up in your mind. And even though it felt right at that moment when you made that decision and you were 100% sure, you're still second guessing yourself on whether you made that right decision. And you already knew it. You weighed it, right? You looked at the pros, you looked at the cons, you looked at other perspectives. You may even have researched it a little bit before you made that decision. So you knew in your heart of hearts, in your gut, that that was the right decision. And still, what happens is days later, or even moments later, or hours later, you start rethinking every step that you made, every part of that decision, and you start wondering, well, I didn't think of this. Maybe I ought to look at it from this perspective. And it's like your worth, your value is on the line because you don't want to make a mistake. And if you made a mistake, wow, how would they look at you? How would you feel? How would that come across? And so that right there is what we're going to talk about today. Second guessing yourself, and really why. And we're going to start with that real world trigger. Remember, there are three things that we're going to talk about every time I get on here. We're going to talk about the real world trigger, number one. Then we're going to talk about the emotional root of that trigger. And then we're going to talk about the shift, because we're not just going to talk about what happens and why it happens, but we need to know how we can change that, how we can make better with it, how we can grow through it. And so that's why I want to get in front of you and talk to you today, because we're always growing, right? So, you know, when I was talking about this, here are some triggers that happen, or here are things that can make you start second guessing yourself. Is you lead with conviction, right? But then you worry that, gosh, maybe I came across too firm. Maybe I shouldn't have said it like that, or maybe my tone should have been different, right? You start wondering if your delivery or how it was perceived was taken correctly. Or maybe it was like you set that boundary, right? That no, and you replay that tone. Oh gosh, was I harsh? Um, I didn't want them to feel bad. All these things are replaying over and over in your mind, and you think about, oh wow, they look like I hurt them. They look so crushed. You're not responsible for their feelings, but you are responsible for your delivery. So these are things that you start asking yourself, and then you say no, right? You tell someone, they ask you a question, you know your boundaries, you know what you want, and you say no. No, I'm sorry, I can't do that right now, or now isn't a good time. However you want to say no, you say no. And in the midst of all that, you start feeling like you have to defend your reasoning for saying no. Like you have to justify why you told that person no. You don't owe that to them. You can, if you want to, tell them why you made the decision that you did to help them in some way. It's not helping you. However, you don't owe that to them. So don't feel that every time you say no, you have to justify why you said no. I remember growing up, one of the biggest things I ever heard, and I got in trouble for going back on this one, is why can't I do this? And my mom, my dad, every adult in my life said, because I said so. Now, me, I made the mistake once of saying, you got to tell me why. You don't have the right to tell me to do something and don't tell me why. Ooh, we won't tell what happened when that happened. And I was a little older too. But the thing is, we don't owe anybody an explanation why. It's a courtesy if we decide to tell them why. That's a courtesy. So, the anchoring thought here is when leadership fuels your unpredictability, because remember, we're talking about leadership here today. It makes you question everything. When you're not sure about your leader, even when things are going right, you start second guessing yourself and wondering, oh, maybe I made the wrong decision, right? And so the emotional root of all this, it isn't the indecision, it's the residue of the leadership that you're under. Did you get that? It's the residue of the leadership that you're under. And so, residue is the residue from years of being evaluated for your tone, how you said that. And we have years of that growing up, right? I just talked about that. And your expression. Oh, don't look at me like that. Oh, I just see my mom all in this. Love her dearly. But I would always get checked on my tone and my expression. And then you're also evaluated on your choices. Was that a good choice? Why did you make that choice? And if you made that choice, was that the best choice? All these things. So these are things that we grow up being second guessing ourselves. And the residue that we bring from our childhood, the residue that we bring from adulthood, from going to school, we're always dealing with these things. But the thing is, from bosses who actually change the rules. How many of you out there, come on, I want to hear, look, tell me you're here. But how many out there have actually had bosses that changed the rules on them midstream? We're going to do this, and all of a sudden we have to do that. Now, sometimes there's a reason for that, and I understand that exactly. Like sometimes their boss tells them that they have to change a rule, and then they come back and they're just the bearer of bad news. But I'm talking about those bosses who are unpredictable, who change the rules, who have these great ideas and change everything at the fly of a hat, and sometimes don't even think them all through, right? And so we also deal with this from systems that reward obedience and punish alignment. So what am I saying here? Just do what I say. Ooh, there's another one of those things we grow up with or we hear during our childhood. Just do what I say. And so not what I do, right? And so we're rewarded for being obedient, for doing what we say. And I'm big on obedience. I'm really big on obedience, and my faith is a big part of that is obedience. But the thing is, I'm not punished for alignment. And what we do is we're punishing for making the decision that is aligned with our beliefs and our values, because then we're not a team player. Oh, you're not a team player. No, I'm one that stands on integrity, and that's wrong. So now you're being punished or you're being looked down on because you've made the right decision for you. You've made the decision that was in alignment instead of just blindly obeying someone. Obedience doesn't mean making blind decisions, right? And so second guessing doesn't come from that uncertainty. We are uncertain when you're dealing with a person that's sporadic and you don't know what they're going to do from the next day to the next. You know, we deal with a lot of uncertainty, but that's not where that second guessing come from. It comes from knowing exactly who you are, right? I want you to hear this, knowing who you are and wondering if that's allowed. Okay, this is what I believe, but do I have to temper what I believe? Do I have to change what I believe to be in this environment? Do I have to buckle down? Do I have to be somebody that I'm not? This is what I'm talking about. So, hey, Valerie, it is so good to see you here today. So, these are things that we deal with all the time is wondering if I'm allowed to be who I am, if I'm allowed to stand on my values, if I'm allowed to stand on my beliefs, if I'm allowed to stand on the things that drive me, or do I have to swallow that and try to be somebody that I'm not? And so we want to, now that we've talked about that and you understand really where I'm coming from and what we're talking about and how that leadership all through your life affects you, right? Now we're going to make a shift, because there's a difference between being open to feedback, which we all want to be, feedback, not condemnation, feedback, and being trained to doubt your own instincts. And a lot of times that's what we bring from our childhood. That's what we bring from our schoolhood. And that's what we bring from our adulthood, depending on how deeply that root went. And so share, how do I say? Let me get my thoughts together. This instability, this second guessing ourselves, is even more prominent when it comes to women who are raised to be self-aware to a fault. And so what am I talking about being self-aware? Is constantly vigilant on your decisions that you make, consciously vigilant about every move that you make. Oh, am I going to upset dad? Oh, am I going to upset the professor? Oh, am I going to upset my boss? So you're constantly looking at, evaluating, thinking through, can I do this? Is this the right move? Instead of asking yourself, is this in alignment with who I am? Is this in alignment with my values, my beliefs? Can I wake up tomorrow with this? Can I live with this? We don't do that. What if you stop trying to be right by somebody else's standards? All those voices in your life and in your head. What if you just stopped trying to be right and started checking in with your own standards? Because at the end of the day, you got to live with you. And can you wake up every morning and look in the mirror and say, hey, I'm all right with that girl? That's what you have to live with. So I like to leave you with the practice. So we're going to do one practice. So next time, get this, next time you find yourself spiraling after a decision that you made, second guessing yourself, wondering if you did it right, I want you to pause. Just take a second. Whew. Take that moment. See, I just paused. What part of me, this is what you're going to ask yourself. What part of me already knows I was right? What part of me already know that I made the right decision for me? Here's the second part. And what part of me is afraid it won't be received? Because isn't that what it is? What part of me is afraid that that won't be received? And so I would encourage you to journal this. You'll find out a lot about yourself when you take that time to journal through that. Take a few minutes, end of the day, before you go to bed, all those things that just really resounded for you, that really hit you, that maybe you want to ponder on. Or speak it in your phone. I know you're busy. I know you're always doing things and going out there. So speak it in your phone. Have a particular journal note on your phone that every time something pops in your head, something wonderful, like I use Letterly, but every time something pops in your head, you don't want to lose it, because an hour later you're going to forget exactly what it was you said. You know, it was something about this, but that kind of thing. Don't explain it, just honor it. Don't explain it, just honor it. So, I have been thrilled. I told you I'm going to stay around 15 minutes to talk to you. I hope that this really touched you, made you think. It's all about thinking. We're thinkers. We have brains and we have that right. And so if this touched something that you don't have words for right now, you're not alone. How many times have I been just unable to find the words? You see it here, and those, there are times. But you know what? For you, I'm asking you to DM me or comment, whichever you're comfortable with, but just tell me what came up for you. I want to know what came up for you. And this, the Unlearning Break Time Live, is our space. It's our time to talk about those questions. In fact, I invite you that if you have a particular burning question that deals with your emotional wellness, hey, ask me. Just don't ask me where babies come from, okay? Every time someone asks me, do I have a question? That's the first thing that pops in my mind. Not that I don't know, but it's just a little joke for me. So, anyway, listen, I can't wait to hear from you. And I will be looking for your DM or your comment. Until next time. Hey, and if you watch this on replay, go ahead and put in there hashtag replay. Until next time, take care. Bye bye.